Welcome to the Successful Athletes Podcast presented by TrainerRoad, where we interview successful athletes to make you a faster cyclist. Today, I'm joined by Brenkus out of Wren, Washington. How you doing, Ray?
Good. How are you doing, Jonathan?
Doing well. I'm really excited to do this one because we're going to talk triathlon. It's been a while since we have talked triathlon. Also, you qualified for Kona, which is, for those that don't know, that's the Ironman World Championships. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. It's been a long haul to get to this point. A lot of work put into this.
Yeah, let's talk about that. When did you start with triathlon?
So I got into triathlons in 2012. I'd been cycling for, 3 to 5 years prior to that, and just kind of said, I want to try something a little different. I did the Seattle to Portland bike ride. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that.
Oh, cool.
That's a 200-mile endurance ride, but you kind of do that in 1 or 2 days. I just decided, hey, I want to do something a little different. And I said, well, maybe we want to try a triathlon or two and stuff. So then I kind of said I wanted to do one in 2012, and I signed up for a race in 2013. It was in the fall there. And I went to the pool to try to swim, the first time to swim a little bit. And that was definitely a challenge, to say the least. I couldn't even swim 25 yards the first time I got in the pool. So I'm like, okay, how am I going to do this? And so I just kind of kept at it, watched some videos, and then I joined a local tri club, raised the bar here outside of Seattle, and kind of got hooked up with some more consistent swimming. And then that finally came around, got better over about a 6-month period of consistent swimming for like 3 to 4 times a week. And finally was able to be confident that, hey, I can actually maybe swim this and do this type of thing. And then being part of the tri club, they really help, really encourage you, really give you guidance and help you with all the nuances of what triathlon is all about, stuff like that. So that's kind of how I got started. Did my first race in 2013, ended up doing a half distance here outside of Seattle, Lake Stevens, and that went pretty well. So after that race, I committed to do a full in 2014, which was Coeur d'Alene. And I got some coaching guidance from our tri club, and with some help from the team there, got swimming more often, and got kind of a bike and kind of run plan put together to kind of what you do to kind of build up the mileage and the distances to get ready. And then, with our tri club there was probably, I think, like 15 or 20 people doing that race. So that helped. Just a lot of camaraderie and just a lot of people encouraging each other, and went out and did that race. I think I finished around 12 hours and 44 minutes. So a respectable race, but not what I thought I could do. And just kind of been keeping at it since that point. Then in 2015, I did a full Ironman Whistler, which is Ironman Canada. They moved that back.
Cool one to do.
They moved that back in Ticton. A friend of mine that I trained with a lot back then, Ryan, he and I kind of did that race together and trained for that race together, and I thought I was really well prepared based on what I learned in 2014, but it didn't go quite as well. I ended up about 12 hours and 45 minutes, I think, about the same as Coeur d'Alene. So I thought I was better prepared, but it didn't seem to work out. And then, at that point, I kind of said, okay, I need to do something a little different. I need to maybe commit to a little bit more effort and all that. And then one of our tri club coaches introduced me to TrainerRoad with one of the 30-day free trials, and kind of said, here's a software program you maybe should think about doing to help kind of get some more structure and a little more discipline. I had just gotten a power meter, and I had basically a fluid trainer. So I just started with a fluid trainer and a power meter, and got the 30-day trial and started using the program a little bit, and realized, hey, this is actually, a little bit better and a little more, could see some more improvement gains.
Nice.
So what we did, at that time, we were, as a group, as a tri club, and some of my friends, we would kind of get together with group workouts in our garage, in one of the garages, and actually have 3 or 4 of us together using TrainerRoad and just kind of doing workouts together to help kind of, just help keep each other motivated and stuff like that. So
sure.
Doing that through 2015 and 16, I raced a half iron in 2016 and had a step function improvement. And what I noticed, I was stronger on the bike, but I was also just stronger on the run. So I think that structured training helped just develop that muscular endurance that you guys talk about a lot, and just that ability to push the pedals and just go for a longer period of time. And I ended up shaving about 20 minutes off my half iron time in 2 or 3 years there. And then after that successful race in 2016, that improvement, we committed, a friend of mine, my friend Ryan and I, we committed to do Arizona in 2017. So we had about a 13 or 14 month kind of time period. And that's when we committed to Sweet Spot Base Plan. We went to the Sustained Power Build Plan at that time. And then we did a Century Plan kind of as we moved into the summer. And then we had our organized plan for the fall for that race in Arizona, because the Arizona race is in November. But we went through kind of the base build and specialty to kind of help ourselves get ready for that. And at that race, I went 10 hours and 22 minutes. So I was really big. It was a big function improvement. And I think that was a direct result of the TrainerRoad plans and that discipline of using that structured training back then. So it really helped and really showed me that, hey, this program works, the plans work, the workouts work, as long as you follow them, stick with them, and you're consistent. I know you guys talk a lot about that. And
sure,
being consistent with that 3 to 4 bike rides a week and putting in the work and understanding what's going on.
So at that take point, some steps back really quick.
Okay.
You've had like that's a 2-hour reduction is huge, super impressive. And over the course of that time, I'm sure that you went through just coming from cycling, then going into multisport, and then refining and improving and refining and improving to get to that point. I'm sure that you changed a lot about how you trained. So firstly, when you first came in, coming with a cycling background and everything else, and then once you started using TrainerRoad, you had already put in quite a ton of training to get to that point. Your starting FTP was 285, correct?
285, right around 285 back in 2015. And I think by the time I raced Arizona in 2017, I was right around in the upper 320s, somewhere in that range. So I had a significant improvement. The structure, and I kind of just really enjoyed the structure and the discipline of that, and I've gotten to the point now where I'm on the trainer more than I ride outside, just from a convenience standpoint, just based on where I live with traffic and just the time constraints of work and family and all those other things. It just makes it a little easier to do, to get the work in and then move on to other aspects of your life in that regard. So it definitely provided a pathway to allow me to have those step function improvements. Because before then, when I did Canada and Coeur d'Alene, pretty much all the riding was outside. So if it was still raining out, I maybe didn't ride, or if it was raining, I would still go out and do that. And it just maybe wasn't as structured as it needed to be. It was just basically bike riding. So just a lot more just bike riding. Okay, hey, you need to go out and ride for 2 hours. Okay, you ride for 2 hours versus doing a 2-hour workout on TrainerRoad is a lot different. Given that, when you're outside with the terrain, stoplights and all those kind of things. So that step function change to adding that discipline of the structure after 2015, propelled me to a big improvement when I raced Arizona in 2017.
That's awesome.
So
when did you fit in the training or actually, let's talk about right now. When do you fit in your swim, bike, and run training? And then how has that evolved since the beginning? And we're talking about how you fit it in relation to the rest of your life, professional, family, everything else.
So I do a lot of swimming in the morning. So today I actually got up at 4:30 to be at the gym right at 5:00 to get a 45-minute swim in, so then I could get to work after that and do that. So I do a lot of swimming in the morning. What's nice with our tri club on Saturdays and Tuesdays and Thursdays, we have a coach team workout typically throughout most of the year. So it's all of us that are focusing on triathlons and all coming together to try to improve. We have an on-deck coach. All those things help make it a little more enjoyable, help push you to get a little bit stronger, or even maybe when you're not necessarily feeling like, hey, I don't want to go, or I don't want to swim today. If you know these other people are going to be there and you signed up and you committed, you get there and do that. So typically the swims are in the mornings, early in the mornings. What's nice here up in Seattle now at this time of the year, it's light by like 5:00. So if you really want to, we get out in the lakes probably by 6:00 in the morning when we go swimming in open water. So I get that done first thing in the morning typically. And then usually what I do right after work, when I come home from work or whatever, within about 20 minutes of getting home, I'm on the bike for my hour workout or so during the week and get that done. So that way I usually start work fairly early, 6:30, somewhere in that time frame. So I'm usually trying to be done with any of my workouts by about 5:00 or so, 5:30, so that I have the rest of the evening to do family stuff or whatever. And then, I've evolved if my son's got a baseball game or soccer game or something like that, I will switch some things around and do some things later in the day. And then on the weekends, when people are sleeping in, I'm usually up earlier in the day, trying to get on the trainer sooner, so that way I can have the rest of the day and make sure that I'm trying to be done with all my stuff by 11 o'clock or so. That way I have the rest of the day to focus on family, do other things and things like that, and adjust. And then if we have stuff going on, you shorten the workout and you don't really worry about it too much. I don't really sweat too much if I'm supposed to do a 3 or 4 hour workout. If I have to cut it to 2 hours, I know I'm still getting a high quality in, and I'm going to continue moving forward.
So that's a lot of energy demand with work, family, training multiple times. How do you fuel all of that work?
So I fuel every workout. I use a couple of different products. One of the products I use is Carbo Rocket. They're 333 half Evo. So I use that product as one of the products I use for my biking. I use Tailwind Nutrition is another product that I use for some of the biking and some of the running. And then I use the Infinite Tripwire for my longer runs and my race type stuff. So I typically fuel just about every workout. So that way I know that I'm coming into it and I'm getting able to do the work, and it's not going to put me in a hole for the next day or the day after. Because if you don't, then you're not going to be able to just sustain the effort. It's going to catch up with you 2 or 3 or 4 days later if you don't continue to fuel the workout. So those are the products that I use. And they seem to work for me. Depending on I usually take about a bottle about every 50 minutes or so when I'm on the trainer, depending on the workout, somewhere in that range, depending on how things are going and the temperature and what's going on and stuff.
Awesome. You've also mentioned that you have done some criterium racing as well. Have you done that in tandem with racing triathlon? Like, have you continued cycling specific competition while you've been training for tri?
So I not in the last couple of years, the crit stuff has dropped off, but back in 2017 and 18 stuff, we were doing some crit racing because the crit racing here is typically with the one local race we have is from starts, I think, in April and goes to August. So when we were racing in November, it would kind of fit in to be able to do 1 day a week, do that crit kind of high intensity type stuff. And we had a group of 5 or 6 of us out there or a few more racing it. So it helped that we were all going to be there, just more there for the workout, trying to compete and see what we were capable of doing there. It had that. I have dropped that off a little bit just because from a time commitment to get there, get warmed up and race, just some other obligations. I've had to drop that a little bit as far as that activities. But yeah, I have done some of that and like to continue to do that. And get back into either some crit racing. I mean, I have a desire to get into some gravel riding at some point here. That's kind of next on the list, but I have to pick and choose, what you can and can't do right now and stuff like that. So, but yeah, but still kind of doing some of that as try to help maintain some of that fitness just to provide some variety in what I'm doing. Yeah.
Cause it's tough. I mean, when you've got all the other obligations to take on another type of cycling is hard. Do you think that has made you mentioned that it gave you high intensity training, but has that helped you in other ways, specifically in the context of triathlon? Has criterium racing made you better in some way as a triathlete?
I think sometimes when you're trying to go deep or you're trying to maybe create a breakaway or whatever, and that typically when I do crit racing, I'm trying to there for a workout. I'm not much of I haven't focused on the sprint type activity or the sprint work. So when I'm there, I'm trying to potentially create a break with 2 or 3 other folks and then do that sustained kind of threshold type effort for a longer period. If I can, get a 2 or 3 lap type break setup or whatever, and do those kind of things when I'm out there crit racing. Those are the kind of things that play to more of my strengths. I don't have that quick snap type sprint. Just because I haven't focused on that, but I can do it more sustained efforts for longer periods and see how that plays into the race and kind of make the field react to some of those activities when I was racing the Cat 4-5 type stuff, because they would follow and you got to kind of do that. And yeah, it's kind of fun to go, okay, if you do something, everyone else has to react to it. So it's kind of nice knowing that they're going to react to what you're going to do. Yeah. Yeah. Stuff.
Crit racing is a fun chess game for sure. So let's talk about Tulsa. So that's a recent race that you did. That's where you qualified for Kona. Yeah. Your time was 10 hours, 26 minutes, 49 seconds. That's a fast time. Your swim was 1 hour and 6 minutes. Your bike was 5:25 and your run was 3:42. For those that don't know what that course is like, can you explain what the course is like? And then we'll step back and after that, we'll talk about how you specifically prepared for this event.
Okay. So Tulsa, the way they've got it set up is kind of what they would call a point-to-point type race. So the race starts out at a reservoir called Keystone Lake, Keystone State Park. and that was about 20 miles west of town. So you would have your transition there from your swim to your bike there, and then you would ride. They had you ride through the countryside on one loop, heading basically north in Oklahoma, heading north out of that reservoir, and you did basically a full on loop on a lot of the country roads back into Tulsa, basically just near downtown by the Oklahoma State University campus there. Then you transitioned there to your run, and then they had you run through town, and then you ended up on their local trail system, which was along the Arkansas River. And you would do an out and back on that. Then you had to run back up into town, and you finished basically just near about a quarter mile from where the bike to run transition was. So it was a point to point. They had to bus you out in the morning because the swim started. Age groupers were in the water at 6:40 is when we started, but buses started leaving at 4 a.m. So you needed to get out there to get your bike set up, and then you had to walk from where the swim start was versus the swim exit was maybe a quarter mile from each other on the park, because it was a fairly big park. So I think part of the COVID things was they spread everybody out so they could spread the swim start versus the swim finish to keep everybody reasonably spaced out. So you had to walk. So you had to get there fairly early, maybe a little earlier than normal, as you would expect, and kind of get ready and do a little bit of extra walking around. And it was already warm and humid. It was raining, kind of thing. So that's kind of how the setup was. But the race itself, the swim was a one loop swim, and I actually prefer one loop type swims. I've done both, a one loop and a two loop. Just for me mentally, knowing that once I cross that buoy, I don't have to cross that one again, and I'm heading towards the finish. I usually swim a little better on the one loops, but I can do a two loop, but I prefer the one loop. So it was a one loop swim, and like I said, you headed out on the roads there. And from some of my Facebook posts or Facebook groups that I was part of for Tulsa, everyone talked about how difficult the road conditions were. The roads were going to be rough and challenging in that regard. So I had kind of prepared for that. And then I was able to ride a portion of the course that people had talked about. There was this one road called Waterline Road that was extremely rough, very rough, to the point where they had a lot of rough road signs. They had people out there flagging, and they basically put signs out there to say, make sure you're on your hoods and not in your drops, because it was a downhill. And there was just a lot of bottles and food and nutrition on that road when I got to that point. And the roads were worse than I had thought they were going to be. There was a lot of what I would call, if you ride over expansion joints on a bridge and you kind of have a little bit of a divot type hit, there was a lot of that over the 112 miles. Plus with the rain, the wet conditions, and then the rough and just general rough road, it definitely was a mentally challenging, took a lot of mental challenge on me, for me, and physically, just because of all that bumping going on for the full distance. And then the rain, just even though it was warm out, just having the rain and knowing everything was wet, it just made me a little more aware. Maybe I know I slowed down.
Oh, certainly,
in a lot of different areas, because I didn't want to crash. I had concerns about flat tires, expecting more of that, because just with a rougher road, you potentially expect that. I luckily didn't have any kind of issues in that regard. I did almost lose, because it was so raining so hard at the beginning, my front torpedo bottle. When we crossed the bridge from the dam where the reservoir was, we made a hard right and went down a pretty steep hill, and it was really rough. And my front bottle and bike computer holder basically shook loose, and I nearly lost it off my bars because the Velcro was so wet, it wasn't sticking anymore. So I nearly lost it there, and I almost came to a complete stop to get it put back on. So it was definitely a challenging day in that regard.
Yeah. No doubt.
Then the run was, once you ran out of town, you're running downhill to the trail system. That was flat, and any marathon's a hard marathon, whether it's a flat course, hilly course. A marathon is still hard. And the hilliest part of that run was the last mile and a quarter, where you had to run from the trail system back up to town, and you had to run up and down a couple hills and run underneath a set of railroad tracks to get to where the finish was. And when I was getting close to the finish, a gentleman near me, his legs basically cramped up, and he seized up both legs. He just stopped, and it just complete cramp. but he was able to kind of pull himself together and still able to finish really close to me. But there was a lot of that going on, I think, with the humidity and just the long day, the road conditions and everything. It just took a lot out of you if you weren't keeping up on your nutrition. But luckily I didn't have any cramping issues, but I was definitely close in that last mile and a quarter. I was teetering on the edge, and I was glad to finish. I wasn't jumping for joy when I crossed that finish line. I was just like, I'm glad I was able to mentally stay in this race and be able to get it done, because it was definitely challenging from that standpoint.
No doubt. Let's talk about the heat and humidity. How did you prepare for that before?
So I watched your science podcast there. That first one that talked about heat adaptation, heat training. I knew heat training was something that you could do. And when I raced one of my previous races there, we got ready for heat by getting to a hot yoga and doing some sauna work at a gym. Well, the gym's saunas haven't opened. So in March, I did some Googling, and I built a DIY sauna out of a grow tent with some infrared bulbs that I just wired up in a simple circuit that I could plug into the wall. And I just spent time, 3 to 5 days a week for anywhere from 30 to 50 minutes sitting in that little hot box, I called it, in the garage, to help me, based on what that podcast talked about, how it provides just improvements and stuff. Mm-hmm. So I did that up until the race. And at the time when I built that DIY sauna, I actually ordered a sauna, and it finally arrived here just after Tulsa finished. So now that I have it, it was going to work out for Kona, but doing that DIY sauna, I think, helped. It's hard to tell whether it was a significant improvement, but I knew that it couldn't hurt. And I was doing it on a consistent basis based on what you guys talked about in that podcast. And that podcast helped, inspire me to kind of, spend a few $100s there to build a DIY one, because I couldn't get a sauna relatively quickly because they were some long lead. So let me make do with what I can here. And that's what I did. And it seemed to work out pretty well.
Great job with that. What else did you do that you feel like you prepared? In which ways did you prepare exceptionally well or execute exceptionally well at Tulsa?
So I think I executed the run really well. I stuck to my pacing strategy there. I spent a lot of time this time getting ready for Tulsa with less intensity on my running, and spent more time keeping my heart rate under my aerobic number. And I have found that for me, if I keep my heart rate under 135, between 130 and 135, I feel really good. And if I keep that pace where that's at, I will do better. And I can sustain that for a longer period of time. I didn't have any walking on the run, and I've steadily improved my marathons as a result. Back in 2017, when we did Arizona, I was 352. And then when I did Boulder in 2019, I was 349. And now this one, I was 342. So I've steadily improved that marathon time. And I think some of that just comes from experience, and then also just understanding, okay, what is it going to feel like at mile 19 and 20, and understanding that, hey, you can still kind of get through some of this by just practicing your pacing and not overcooking yourself too soon. I've seen a lot of people go out in that last 6 miles of that run. There was only a handful of people that actually passed me on the run, and I was passing a lot of people left and right that were walking in that regard. So I think I executed that really well, to not overdo myself too early on the run aspect, and be able to sustain a pace. And I didn't significantly slow down, because what you can probably see in a lot of data is start off great for the first 13, then the next 6 or 7 is pretty good, but then that last 6 miles, you kind of really fall off the wagon. And I did fall off a little bit, but not significantly like I had when I raced Coeur d'Alene, those first 2 that I raced. So it was a learning process, but I got better at how to execute that aspect of the race.
Great job. What mistakes did you make on race day? Looking back at it, what would you have changed?
If I could have swam a little straighter, my pace per 100 was right on where I expected it to be, but I definitely was swimming a little crooked, and the water was maybe choppier than I expected. So that cost me about 2 minutes there. So I need to do a better job swimming straighter in open water. And what I need to do there is get closer to the buoy line, because I have a tendency to stay away from the buoys, because that's where everybody else is, and not dealing with people kicking you and just, having to having to deal with that. So I could probably do a better job with that, because I wear contacts. So I'm always a little, nervous about getting my goggles kicked or something like that, and having to deal with that aspect. So I could probably stand to improve some of that by getting closer to the crowd and the buoy line and swimming a little straighter to knock that swim time down. That's one area that I can improve, and I can definitely improve my transitions. I took a little extra time in transitions this time because it was wet. When I got off the bike, I had to take off my socks and put on brand new socks because it was just soaked. My feet were basically becoming, shriveled, dried prunes because they were so wet. So, but I wanted to make sure I had good feet for the run and not have any blisters. So I can improve. I know I can improve there in those aspects of racing to get a little faster to shave some time off.
Nice. What bike do you have?
So I have a Boardman Air TT from 2014, size large. And then I have a Quark power meter on it. And then I had profile design wheels. I have an aero jacket on the back and a shallow front wheel. So nothing too significantly, out of the park, but just a pretty basic setup on
awesome.
that.
And what about, was this I don't assume it was a wetsuit swim?
It was a wetsuit.
It was. Okay.
Wetsuit legal. So I have a Roka wetsuit. And then I ran in the Nike Next Percents, just like everybody else that wants to be competitive. If you're not running the Nikes, you're probably not going to be competitive. But there was definitely,
or you're sponsored and paid a lot of mony.
yeah. But you could see that out there, that there was a lot of people wearing some version of those Nike shoes out there when they're on the run. So I wear those for the run. And then a tri-suit, a full sleeve arm, regular arm, full skin suit, not a two-piece, in that regard.
Did the rain cause any issues on the bike other than we already talked about obviously having to be more conservative, but did it cause any issues with like vision, for example? I don't know what helmet you used.
So I used the Garneau P09 helmet, and I have two face shields, one that's a little darker and one that's a little lighter. And I kind of figured it was going to be, we anticipated some rain, maybe not that much. So I went with the lighter helmet, and I didn't have too many problems with that. I think with that lighter visor, I was still able to see and didn't have to take it off. But I did see a lot of people with the Giro Arrowhead helmets. They didn't have their visors on anymore later in the race. They just were wearing them. They had them up and not actually had them on because I don't think they probably couldn't see very well. But I was able to see with that lighter visor, and I had anticipated that it was going to probably rain a little bit. And I felt that going with the lighter visor was going to help me, be able to see better and see stuff in the road and be able to, avoid potholes and those things.
Yeah, smart. Absolutely smart. Well, so with the Kona qualification, it was different at this event than it is usually. Can you explain kind of how that works? Typically?
So typically this one was the North American Championship. So typically at a regional championship, they have more slots than a regular race. A regular race usually has 40 slots, depending on the race, 30 or 40 slots. And a regional championship will have typically 75 plus or minus. And for me, I always felt that I could always somehow crack a top 10 finish. But cracking that top 5, and typically in my age group would have me 4, maybe 5 slots. When I raced Boulder, there was 5 slots and I came in 7th. So I thought I could, crack a top 10. I thought I could get like a 7th place finish. So with 75 slots, there'd be 7 or 8 potentially in my age group. And based on the data, based on what I saw, I thought a 10:15 would give me a 7th place finish. Turns out that would have been 8th place on this day. And that would have given me a chance. But with COVID and some of the race cancellations, they ended up increasing the slot count to 150. And I knew that a couple of days going into the race. So when the conditions were pretty harsh on the bike, and I knew that I was being a little more conservative, I wasn't as concerned because okay, just execute, don't flat, don't crash, and make sure you get to the run with a chance to be near the top 10, and you're gonna qualify. And when I got on the run, I looked at my watch. I was at 6:44, so I knew if I could go right around the 3:40, because that's what I had set out for my goal time, was a 3:40, and I went 3:42. That put me, I knew, low 10s. So I thought, okay, you're gonna be close. You're gonna be close, and that's all you can ask for. And that's all I was looking for, was just a chance. And it just worked out. It ended up being, I think our age group had 15 slots, and then the 2 that were around me had 16 or 17 around me. So there was a lot of slots at this race. It just worked out that way.
That's awesome. You qualified for the World Championships, full distance World Championships. Was this your goal from the beginning, or when did Kona become something realistic that you were looking forward to?
So that was after 2017. I thought after racing Arizona, I thought, maybe on the right race, the right day, I have a chance to qualify. I told my wife, hey, I want to give Kona a chance, and it's going to require a little more effort, a little extra time. And she fully supported me in that regard and said, okay. And so I did a lot of data analysis. I looked at a lot of race times. There's a guy I think in the UK that does a lot of analysis and tried to identify a race that maybe suits my needs a little bit better, and could potentially get me in there. And I had targeted in 2019 Boulder as a potential one, because I think it was less people didn't want to do the race. I thought the bike course set up well for me. And I thought I had a chance there, and I raced it, and I went 10:07 in that race. And like I said, I came in 7th, and there was 5 slots. So I was close. Cool. So I knew I was on the right track with my analysis and everything to try to identify a race. And so what I determined after that race is that I needed a race that had more slots. So I needed the one that had 75 slots to potentially give me a chance, because cracking the top 5 would have been really hard. But I thought I could crack the top 10. If I crack the top 10, that gives me a chance. And all I wanted was a chance. And then when they announced that Tulsa would be the North American Championship, I was able to transfer into that race and said, okay, let's see what I can do here. Let's pencil out what we think is going to be a good time to give me a chance. And that's what I did. Then when the race started, obviously the conditions were kind of not completely unexpected. I think Oklahomans would probably say what they had that day was probably relatively normal, but it was a challenging day. And I just wanted to make sure I didn't do anything that would create a big problem, like a crash or something that would cost me a lot of time and try to stay competitive. And I was able to do that.
Nice work, Ray. What's the goal for Kona? It's super exciting to even talk about, but are you going for the experience? Do you have a specific time that you want to go for?
I haven't really thought about a time. I'm more right now just want to finish the race. I visited Kona a couple times now. I've taken a bike over there. So I've ridden the bike course. I've done some runs on Elite Drive, and I can completely understand how tough those conditions are going to be out there. So for me, and it's always been a goal just to finish it. If I could qualify, the goal is to finish. I maybe do care a little bit about the time. I want to do decently, but it's really just about finishing for me and enjoying that time and enjoying, that qualification and enjoying that race.
This is awesome. Ray, thank you so much for doing this. And this is cool to see an athlete. So you've increased from 2.65 to 3.7 watts per kilogram over the years. I think a lot of the time people expect, or they hear and they assume that everybody else has these massive swings in power or massive swings in power to weight. And you're a testament to consistency over the years paying off and just making sure that you're putting yourself in the right positions to be able to have that success. So way to go. It's super exciting. And I'm excited to cheer for you at Kona. Hopefully, I don't think I'll be there if Cape Epic happens, but if it doesn't happen, then I will be there. So to cheer you on, that'll be really fun to see. Ray, if anybody wants to get in touch with you, are you on the TrainerRoad forum or Instagram or anything else like that?
I'm just on Facebook. Cool. I'm not on Instagram. And then I do dabble in the forum a little bit. I put some questions out there about the DIY sauna and stuff like that. But yeah, I'm just on Facebook there, and I support my local tri club and, encourage the people that are part of the team there and stuff like that. And yeah, I will say it's the consistency. It's the consistency over the years, putting the time in, and not just saying, okay, stop biking for like a month or 2 months. And then, it's just that consistency that you guys talk about. It's being consistent really makes a significant difference in maintaining that fitness.
Yep. It's the most common thing that we see with fast athletes. That's for sure. So, well, thanks a bunch, Ray, once again. And if you're listening to this and you would like to share your story about how TrainerRoad has helped you achieve any level of success, doesn't have to be a Kona qualification, can be anything. You can do so at trainerroad.com/SAP. We'd love to hear from you. So go ahead and do that. And if you're watching this on YouTube, give it a thumbs up and share this podcast with your friends. Ray, we'll talk to you hopefully in Kona. If not, let's stay in touch and see how you do. And we will talk to everybody else here on the podcast next time. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.